Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Um, yeah, this is totally different doing this on Zoom. I've been working the last 2 years on Zoom and I've had to get used to it. I would have loved to have been with you guys. I was here for all of the sessions last night, and God really spoke to me through all of the speakers. And I have to say, I lingered on at the end for the worship. Oh my goodness, that worship was so beautiful with Renelle. Just thank you, Renelle. That was just that really ministered to me deeply. And it also helped me form some of what I'm going to be speaking with you about tonight. So what I want to do is talk about how we get through this difficult time, this kind of COVID time. I'm not going to focus too much on COVID, but I just want to use the example of COVID, that what's happening to us collectively through this time is often what happens on a personal level and brings people into my therapy room. So the very elements of this whole COVID situation is isolation, uncertainty, a perceived threat, loss, high stress, and a kind of loss of a sense of self, a wobbled sense of self. Now, those things are enough to bring somebody into my therapy room. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything really wrong going on. It just means that all of these things collectively for this individual person has really wobbled them. And really that's what's going on in the wider community at the moment. COVID has really brought all of these issues to us personally. And so we're reacting in some of the ways that we would if we were going through just an ordinary, really stressful time. So what I wanted to do tonight was really, I don't know whether Caleb, I can't remember whether you mentioned that I am a counsellor and a psychotherapist. So I work in therapy with clients. And really what I wanted to do tonight was just blend a little bit of the psychology and just integrate that a little bit with spirituality, which is kind of my thing. It's what I've been doing for a long time. And I think that some of the concepts that I'm going to bring you will also help you frame up how this all works. Okay, so what we know psychologically is that when we have negative thoughts, or what we would class as negative thoughts and feelings and images, and I just have to say I really loved what Shane had to say last night, that the words matter less than the images that we use for the functioning of those words. That's so important, because before we learnt language, we thought in images. So even if you don't necessarily consider yourself a visual person as an adult now, those images do underlie language. They do underline that they're there in our psyche. So to a large extent, thoughts and feelings and images, what comes first? Well, they're all pretty much intertwined. And that can be used to advantage, because if we deliberately begin to choose the thoughts and the feelings and the images that we hold, this actually changes us physiologically. It actually changes our neural pathways, and it changes the physiology in our bodies. And like, that's probably one of the most exciting things to understand psychologically, because in some ways we do have that power to change how we respond to the situations that we find ourselves in. The thing that we know about negative thoughts and feelings and images is that they release certain chemicals in our brain, so that are associated with certain emotions like fear and anxiety. So there is actually something physiological going on in our bodies when we're experiencing fear and anger, anxiety, all of those things. I'm oversimplifying this, but without a way of processing those more negative emotions, that can often lead to depression. So part of the work that I do in helping people with depression is unravel a lot of what's going on in people's thoughts and feelings and images and meaning making, because that unravels some of the way that we're holding down our energy. So what's happening through this time is that there is a lot of what we would call negative energy. There is a lot of negative images and thoughts and feelings associated with that. I want to say a little bit later on about holding those negative thoughts, because traditionally we do think of that. We do think of negative thoughts and feelings and images as somehow being wrong. Somehow we're not supposed to feel those things, which kind of also doubles down on the negativity. So one of the things that I always talk about and always teach is that these are normal thoughts and feelings. They aren't the problem, but we do have to kind of take charge of them and begin to do something different with them. Otherwise, we're just going to get kind of swamped with them. So what we need to do, or what helps to do, is to move towards more positive thoughts and feelings and images. And that's something that I think that we're just not taught how to do. We're not really taught how to move ourselves from these more negative thoughts and feelings and images to more positive ones. We tend to think that we're kind of held captive by our thoughts and feelings, but in a lot of ways, we've got used to thinking the things that we're thinking, and they become habitual. They kind of get grooved in our neural circuitry and they become habitual. We can actually deliberately and consciously choose to bring on more positive thoughts and images and feelings. And in a lot of ways, this for me is echoed biblically, because I'm just referencing I don't think, have I got the, in Philippians 4:8, where Paul is talking to the Philippians, he talks about deliberately thinking about those things that are excellent and praiseworthy. Whenever I think of that verse, I think on what is beautiful, or think about what's beautiful and deliberately think on that. And that's not something that we would normally be taught to do, or that we'd normally even think to do. But if you start to do that kind of thing consciously, that will make a difference. It's like consciously choosing to see, like waking up in the morning and choosing, what are the things in my day to day that bring me beauty, that bring me joy, that feel beautiful in some way. And what you're actually doing by doing that is you're releasing endorphins. You're actually physically releasing endorphins that counteract those more negative chemicals that are released through some of the negativity, some of the negative energy, and some of the negative thoughts and feelings that we have. Now, we know how this works psychologically. It's almost as if we've kept all of this stuff to the psychological field. But as soon as you hear about doing something like that, it sounds so obvious, but it's the concept of it that makes all the difference. So one of the things that I wanted to do a little bit of an experiential exercise with you tonight. So if you have paper and pen handy, grab it now. I'm just going to do a quick little exercise with you. So what I want you to do right now is just jot down some words that you associate with God, with Jesus, some more positive words, just to delineate that, but just some positive words, love, peace, whatever words you associate with God. And if you have an image, if you're a visual person, if you have an image, jot that down too. So what I want you to do, if you will indulge me, what I want you to do is to just close your eyes and take a couple of breaths. I'm just going to take you into a very short little visualization, just to explain what I'm talking about here. So it's something experiential that I think will help you. So just close your eyes, just take a deep breath and see those words that you've written down, see them in your mind's eye. And just really let yourself deepen into those words, deepen into the feeling of those words, deepen into now. And what I want you to do is deepen into that place where internally you connect with God. Just connect internally with God, deep in that place inside you. And I want you to just now notice what that feels like in your body. What does this place feel like? What happens? So whatever is happening to you right now is okay and is meant to happen. Nothing is wrong here. Just whatever is available to you right now. And then now I want you to think about something that you're struggling with at the moment. Think about something that feels difficult for you, something that doesn't feel quite so good, something in your life that's not quite as good. Just don't go too deep in there. Just kind of touch on it. Just notice what it is. Notice that really difficult thing that you're struggling with, that's not working, that's not feeling good. And what I want you to notice now is what that feels like in your body. Like you're probably going to feel a bit tighter in your body. You're probably going to feel some discomfort. Just notice where in your body it doesn't feel quite so good. And then what I want you to do now is go back to that first place where you connected with God, where you see those words that you wrote down that are connected with God. And just feel your body opening out. Feel your energy opening back out to connect with God. And just feel what that's like in your body. Just feel yourself opening. Just feel yourself connecting. And then what I want you to do is just write down a few words, just a few words about what that was like to move from what I'll call your God space to that space of struggle and back again. Just a few words about what that experience was like for you. If you didn't see anything, didn't feel anything, that's fine too. Just write that down. That's fine. So in essence, what this is about is being able to consciously move between those two places. And to all intents and purposes, that's what I'm teaching my clients. So it's not so much even that you're getting rid of all the negative stuff, because I got to tell you, that negative stuff stays. So I don't know how long I've been doing this work for and doing my own work. It's never gone away. The goal is not to get rid of this stuff. The goal is to be able to move at will to a larger self, to your God self, what I call your God self. So that it physiologically, emotionally, and spiritually takes you into a larger place. And I think it was Tanya last night who talked about going behind the curtain, that God takes us behind the curtain. And it's like, this is the practical way of how you actually do that. So it's an internal process. So it's something that you have to get used to doing internally, and indeed you can practice internally. So it's a little bit different to prayer, which is when you're really communicating outwards with God. It's more of a practice of centering, continually centering back into this place where you meet with God. So, and again, I loved how Shane was talking about images, because images are so important. And I work with images and imagery all the time, because when I think about moving internally and moving into connect with God, what my image is of me in the throne room. And I loved when Tanya said that behind the curtain was the throne, God's throne room. And it's a place where I'm moving into a much larger, expansive place inside me. So how the way that I would explain this really quickly from a psychological point of view is that we talk about the ego, or the small self, and this small self it kind of comes from our childhood, really. It's kind of a part of us that has narrow vision. It's self-oriented. It's dogmatic but easily influenced. It's the part that holds fear and anxiety. It's very childlike. It needs order and structure, and it needs things that are familiar. So when we're thrown into unfamiliar, uncertainty, and places of the unknown, it activates that fear and anxiety and what we call that small self. So the only thing that counteracts that, the only thing that will make any difference to that, is to move into what we call a larger self. And this is what I call the God self, or the part of us that connects, that's able to connect with God. And indeed, as I see it, interconnected with all of us, that place where we're one. So it is a larger self. This larger self is what holds the hope and compassion and unity. It's the part of us that sees the bigger picture. It's the part of us that's other focused. It's easier to hold mystery, uncertainty. It's easier to hold conflicting emotions in this place, and duality of ideas. It's the place of us that's able to hold humility, and the place of us that has strength, and more importantly, the place in us that's able to hold difference. So already you can see that this is a place that in a lot of ways, because it's connected, I see it as connected to God. It's that part of us that has God's vision. So that's a very kind of oversimplified kind of link between the psychology and the spirituality of it. The important thing to know is that these two parts of self, or this smaller self and larger self, it's not necessarily about getting over that small self and moving to that larger self continually, because you can't do that. You're human. They coexist together. But building an awareness of when you're acting out of that small self and when you're acting out of that larger self is really important. And the way that you learn how to do that is by learning to move yourself internally to feel what it's like in your body. And I'm hoping that little exercise I gave you was a little bit of an example of feeling what it's like in your body when you're in your small self, and what it's like when you're in this larger self. So you actually, even physiologically, you are actually using more of what we call your new brain, or your larger brain, and you're activating more rational, more higher complex thinking than when you're coming from that smaller self, which is kind of related to the older parts of our brain. So, I mean, psychologically and spiritually, it all fits together beautifully. The thing about that is that this is the place where we hold the hope and we hold the compassion. So when you're interacting with others from your larger self, from this part of you that's connected to God, and when you can feel that in your body, you know the difference. Most of you, all of you, will know the difference when you're worshiping, or when God is touching you, when you feel like you're in that expansive place. And others in your presence, it's like it invites other people to move into their larger selves. It invites them to move to that place. where they can actually access their own hope and compassion. So this is what I do all the time in therapy, in spiritual direction, is helping people learn how to move bodily into this larger place where they can connect with God. So I don't know how much time I've got left. I haven't been watching. I'm hoping I've just got a little bit of time just to speak about some imagery.
Yeah, go for it, Dinah. That's fine.
Yeah. So I think imagery is really, really important. So I really want to leave you with a desire to really think about some of the image. The Bible is chock-a-block full of the imagery for God and the imagery around Jesus. It's just so full of every different type of imagery to build up this larger self in you. So even if we talk about, I think two of the words that were mentioned last night for the times that we're in were doom and gloom. So when you think of those words, doom and gloom, they actually carry a lot of energetic weight. They actually, if you say those words, you think those words, you can feel your body moving into that small, constricted space. So in a lot of ways, one of the main thing that I teach the people that I work with is to reframe those negative, or what we call more negative words. So just as an example, one of the reframes that I've done personally for living in this time is that it's not necessarily doom and gloom, because how I understand it is that when personally we're moving to a place of breakthrough, things start to break down, things start to deconstruct. They actually, if you think of the analogy or the metaphor of the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, it's completely deconstructed and broken down, and then reforms, breaks out of the cocoon, and it's a butterfly. I love that metaphor, because that's how I see what happens for us when we grow spiritually and psychologically, that we deconstruct in some ways, which is why people often come to me, because they're starting to feel like they're losing their self or breaking down. But it's just that deconstruction that happens before there's reconstruction. So that's how I see these times, that this is a time of deconstructing. There are a lot of things that are deconstructing, a lot of worldviews, a lot of beliefs, a lot of ways of seeing the world that are deconstructing, but it creates a void for a reconstruction. Now, because I reframe it in those words, using those images, that immediately allows me to move to that larger sense of self, to hold that hope and compassion for the times that are coming. Do you see how that works? So there are all sorts of other imagery that you can hold about God. So what I'd really encourage you to do is actually really think about the imagery for God that really works for you, and it encompasses the whole continuum. Even just thinking of Jesus as the lamb or the lion of Judah and the Lamb of God, right there are the two polarities. And if you look at all the imagery for God, it always encompasses all of the polarities. Even images like the fortress or the way or the vine and the branches, the king, the comforter, the sacrificial lamb, all of those images hold really strong energy, so that when you dwell on those images, you're actually physiologically changing what happens in your body, which changes your emotions, which changes the way that you live in your world, really, and it changes the way that you interact. So at this time, we need to be pressing in, we need to be deliberately pressing into that. And I know we're exhorted all the time to, you've got to, you've got to do this or you've got to do that. But it's like, if you really understand how that's changing you in your body, how that feels for you when you're with yourself, when you're interacting with each other, that will take you on that journey of finding those images that really work for you. And they can be connected to Bible verses. There's let's see if I can find the reference for it. There's a verse in the Old Testament, I think it's Joshua. No, it's not. It's not at all. It's not Joshua. That's the one that you have here. It's Psalm 121. I love this verse. I've always loved it. I lift up mine eyes unto the hills from whence cometh my help. And I always see myself kind of in this camp where we're pressed on all sides, and I lift up my eyes and there's the army of God. There's whatever I want to see there. But I know what that does inside me when I hold that image. So I'm actually, it's like a movie reel. I'm actually seeing that image, and it's changing it's actually changing my whole physiological workings, because I'm holding that image. So I would really encourage you to have 3 or 4 verses or 3 or 4 images that really you can just grab hold of, that you know that as you think about those verses, as you see those images related to those verses, you're actually physiologically changing how you're feeling and what's happening inside your body. It doesn't mean that the other stuff goes away, but you're putting it alongside of that. You don't need to make that smaller self or those negative emotions wrong in any way. And a lot of times we need to give voice to that. We need to have a safe place to give voice to those feelings, but it doesn't mean that you stay there. You know, moving through the valley of death means you're moving through it. You're not staying stuck there. So, you know, it's not that we're trying to get rid of any of that stuff, but we do have to bring alongside that larger self, that part of us that connects to God, that connects to each other. And just one last verse that always is with me when I feel depressed or I feel desperate is Deuteronomy 30:19, where God says, it's out of context totally, but I use it that way. I put before you life and death, choose life. So even those words, it's like, here's life, here's death, here's life, here's death. Choose that one, choose life. And as soon as I hear myself saying internally, choose life, I can feel what that does in my body. I can feel that my body relaxes. So I would really encourage you to find those verses, find those images for God that really work for you, that really take you into that larger self. I think I'm done. I think that's it.